Okay, may I get a motion that we accept this language?
So moved.
Bob King, second.
Second.
Ed Torian. Motion's been made and seconded that we accept the language as shown for the conflicts of interest, section 8-3. How about some discussion? Rick, do you want to start us off?
Excuse me one moment. I don't really like the language I gave you. But we can work on that. All right, first,
Give the handout back.
yeah, no. Easily fixed. The two state law sections that I've given you contain language that, it's pretty clear to me, resulted in the language of 8-3. So you can see where it came from. There are other state statutes that you might want to take a look at, but you might not. But I'm going to give you the sections anyway, so you can write them down. There are, for example, state statutes now that, under the umbrella of code of ethics, shall we say, require financial statements from elected officials and high-ranking appointed officials. That's 1-83 of the statutes. 1-84 contains prohibited activities. Don't take gifts. And also contains some language saying you don't disclose confidential information that you acquire in the course of your duties. And 1-84B says you, for a year, you have certain prohibitions with respect to the kind of jobs you take. You can't go and work for a contractor when you're responsible for awarding the contract to him for a year after you leave. I'm giving you those sections, but I'm telling you that I think, in my opinion anyway, those belong in the ordinances, not in the charter, because otherwise you're going to double the size of your charter just dealing with this topic, which would be bad. And so, to tell you the truth, I just copied this from a suggestion I made to Gene Eriquez without really reading it this morning more carefully, and I should have done that. But the point is really a good one. We come right up to the edge of saying don't do that in 8-3, and we don't ever say that. We say, oh, this is bad, and this is not so bad. And then we say, and the council will tell you how really bad it is when they adopt an ordinance setting a penalty for it. But we never say don't do it. And so if we could come up with some language that's better than this, that might be a good idea. And so what's missing in here? All elected or appointed city officers and employees are prohibited from having an interest that is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of duties. That would be better. The current language of B and C uses the word which. Now, for the grammarians here, I think maybe that should be that. I don't know. I'm willing to use which, but having an interest, it says, having an interest which is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge. So if you want it to be consistent, wrong but consistent, you could say all elected or appointed city officers and employees are prohibited from having an interest which is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge.
Well, it looks like that section B only pertains to men. So women.
Yeah, well, we
So
always
women.
interpret gender and number flexibly. But we could change, you could certainly change that.
Yeah, that's...
My guess is that they lifted it right out of the statute, and it probably says he in there. No, it doesn't. I don't know where they got heat.
The point that says, as herein defined, where is it herein defined? In
A and B.
Okay. So it's simple, so that simply says all elected or appointed city officers and employees are prohibited.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Referring to, we could take out A and B technically and say any pointed as described in or defined in. Does that make it just too vague? Meaning is it better to lay it out? Because if this changes,
Yeah, you know what? My guess is, if you were to strike that language in 8-3, people would be unhappy.
yeah.
Why are you taking out the language dealing with conflicts of interest?
Yeah. And there's no way to provide the flexibility if the state law has changed.
It's been this way for a really long time. More or less, I mean, the concept's always been there.
And it's not, how much could it be changed, really? Conflicts of conflicts. We've probably found them all by now.
I have a question.
Mary?
I have a question. Should we reference these state statutes
I
anywhere?
don't think you need to.
We don't need to?
No.
Other places we do, but we need to do it here.
You don't need to. You can.
Would it make it shorter? If we simply reference statutes?
I think he's going to,
I guess,
See,
depends
also-
on
The big
how
27.
you
We
do that.
wouldn't have to lay it all out if we could say.
but that's a good point, bring it up.
No,
Yes. You could do it with reference to the language of the statutes. You would have the benefit of adding flexibility if the statute were changed.
Bad habit of changing the whole number.
I don't know, that's
You know,
that's a judgment call.
Would we have to name the statutes, or could we say, you know, as contained in current state statutes, which would open it up?
They could change their number, then we'd all be.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what happens when you get that specific, then it happened in other sections where we have to go back and fix them there.
If they changed the statute, I still could live with what's here. I can't imagine it getting so changed that this doesn't protect the city and the people and the taxpayers more.
Yeah. If it's giving
So
the
I think-
message, it-
So I think it would, except maybe the spelling errors in the title. But those are gonna be part of the big 27, or is that what?
What spelling errors?
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's conflicts.
There's a few added.
The title.
Look at it. How do you spell conflicts?
Where would sorry?
In the chart.
8-3, right in the title, first word.
There's an extra I there.
Oh.
Conflict.
There is
No, not in mine.
Oh.
Oh, not yours? You
No,
have the
no,
updated one.
no, I got
And
a
furnished
really
is-
old one.
And furnish is spelled
Really?
wrong.
You got, no,
All these kids
By the
today
way.
can't
Huh?
spell.
Furnish is spelled wrong also.
right.
It's all subject to that.
Okay, is anyone put off by the references to he and his spouse and things like that?
I don't know, we must have discussed it, because I actually wrote somewhere that we were gonna use the same beginning of that paragraph as we had for A, just to replace the word he with any elected or appointed city officer or city employee.
Shall we send this back for a little bit of rework?
No.
I think we can change the language.
But, you know,
in-
we can vote on the change and then adopt more formal changes
Right.
later. I mean,
If you adopt the change, I'll provide, as I'm going to with the others, with respect to the other sections, I'll provide you with revised language that shows how you voted
Okay,
next time.
okay,
all right,
you know, the substantive change we can make and we can fit, you know.
all right. Are we happy with the substantive change? That,
Yes.
Bob?
Yes, I am. I just had a question in the comment discussion. Are we discussing it?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
we're here for discussion.
This applies to all elected and appointed city officers and employees. What if an elected official has a conflict of interest? What do we do?
What do you do? Since the Common Council has not adopted an ordinance setting forth penalties in accordance with the current provision D, that's a matter for the public to complain about, for other elected officials to use the bully pulpit to complain about. I think you're asking me, what's the penalty? Right now, there is no penalty.
Then this doesn't have any teeth.
Language in the Constitution of the United States doesn't have any teeth if you're looking for it to establish penalties.
So other than you shouldn't do that, that's it.
Correct.
There's no provision for removing the person from the position?
No?
There is no provision for censuring him?
If you, I expected the subject of recall to come up in connection with elongation of terms, and I'm not sure that recall is provided for in state law, but I haven't really looked. And I expect that'll be another conversation that we'll have.
I'm not
But
looking.
All I'm saying to you, Bob, is that the charter is not necessarily the place where you put the penalty.
Okay. I guess what I'm troubled, I'm not addressing current situation, but looking forward. Suppose we get an elected official whose brother is in a construction company, and he happens to be head of the highway department. Does he have a conflict of interest? Only if he exercises a contract.
Could you hold on a minute? I think we're out of tape.
You caught all my comments. That, period. So, that solves your problem.
You don't want to hold the thought?
That solves your problem, Peter.
Are we done? We don't have any more tapes?
I have no more tape.
Meeting's adjourned.
No, it's okay. We have most of them. Do you have any more of these at your office is locked, right? Your former office.
We can go and lock it. I have no idea whether to keep the tapes.
That's okay. All right.
I think we're about.
I would say we're virtually done.
That was my only concern with this, Rick. And, it's not addressing a current situation, it's addressing what might be, since we're looking at this as a living document.
Can I just add one general comment? It won't be long, because I know we ran out of tape, but this
Wait,
state statute.
The tape is just, there's no magic to the tape.
Okay.
Yeah, so don't hesitate to say what.
Okay.
Peter Buzade will be taking copious notes, so
It's you.
feel free to talk right on.
I'll be right on those notes after I read the Waterbury Charter.
Upside down. Well,
In this,
standing on your head.
148 section of the state statute, it talks about an ethics commission in addition to this conflict of interest. And we really don't have an ethics commission at all, and I don't know whether we even want to go down that path, because I'm afraid that if I vote on, the language to change this section, do we want to consider having an ethics commission? Because I know that a lot of the other city charters do, and that is really, just by having that commission, that's the body that assigns penalties for these sort of things, as well as the other things described here, such as unethical conduct, the other things that are listed here under the ethics commission. But is that something that we don't want to consider, or was that just too far reaching for this charter revision?
The subject of ethics and a code of ethics actually exists at Danbury, as does an ethics commission. It's just contained in the code of ordinances.
Oh, I see, okay.
Someone did speak to us, and they said that, and I might have had this wrong, but my notes are, the Ethics Commission is only for city employees. But they were asking it as a question, and they said, if true, it needs expansion to elected employees. Is that
Elected officials, I believe that it covers elected officials. I don't have my code of ordinances. Does anybody have one? No? I believe it covers not just
You don't have it.
employees, but also officers.
Okay. That's probably something that we can bring up at a later date and look into that if that's something that we want to do.
I think that the ethics issue, conflict of interest, and is beyond the scope of a charter other than to make reference to. You know, it exists, there's state law that must be complied with that supersedes anything that goes in the charter. I mean, it's there now is the only reason I might want to tinker with it, but I don't really think we need to spend a lot of time on this. I think that it's a council issue, if anything at all, the ethics of elected officials and employees.
Does it say that in here?
If conflict
does
of
not.
interest was not in here, would you put it in here?
No,
So it need not even be in the charter?
I don't think it needs to be in the charter at all.
And I think Bob's issue, is something you should complain to the council about and say, hey, get on with your duties.
Right.
Instead of sticking the penalties in here, that's,
So in effect,
I think there's a remedy.
so what this does is, this cleans us up a little bit, and we can ask,
So it's this one, Paul, right?
Yeah.
and we can ask Rick to clean up the language and things. But this tidies up what we've got, doesn't add penalties, because it's more an ordinance and a council issue.
Yeah, I could vote for this tonight, but my concern was that, you know, it's very much that there is nothing, as we've heard from a couple, or I've heard from a couple of council members, we write things in the charter, but if we violate them, there is no penalty for it. So what is the penalty for violating a charter?
You know,
And the penalty could be, maybe penalties as it's put here. It's up to the common council. That it ought to be brought before a body. I guess that's what I'm saying. And if you're telling me Section D satisfies that, then I'm comfortable with what you got.
Section D satisfies that.
Only for conflicts of interest, not other ethics issues.
And the other ethics issues are dealt with in the code.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
yeah. And the one thing the state's done a lot of work on is ethics issues, so I'm assuming that we're okay, we're protected there.
Well, the state statutes that I cited for you really relate to state employees and officers. The 1-83, 1-84 sections, those are not necessarily imported into local law. Would it be wise someday to review the code of ethics as we're now reviewing the charter and bring it up to date and talk about whether or not there ought to be financial statements provided by high-level officials? Yeah, that'd be a good idea, but that's not your job.
You know, I would agree with that. I don't think it's our job.
Okay.
And for one reason, we have enough problems getting people to run for office in this community. If you have them start to have disclosed financial statements,
Oh, yeah.
we'll have 21
Yeah.
vacancies on the council, you know?
But part of our final report may be that they should do something about ethics and penalties, so, okay.
Right.
Any more discussion on this section? I'll try your minds, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did I catch you by surprise?
No, I think that you got 4 votes since you, 5.
You didn't vote.
I was, aye. Motion's
We got
approved.
one abstain.
Motion's
Did you-
approved unanimously.
Anybody opposed?
So I understand this.
You didn't vote? Did you vote for it?
Just didn't say
The
anything.
vote approved the language with the change that I offered about adding the word interest?
Yes.
Which,
And-
comma?
And does it also include changing he to be parallel with the
We would,
language?
yes, we would like that.
Okay.
We would like it to have we'd like a parallelogram. Okay.
We heard our fate tonight.
Now, before we step along, I think we've discussed that we are definitely hitting one item the next time we meet.
Well, the famous number 4, which says anything you want to discuss, and then we're going to have a conversation among the commissioners of other things that we as commissioners have read in charters that you want to review. Is that, Peter, where you're going?
We're going to talk about the next meeting, we're going to discuss the actual language for bonding.
Well, that's the first item.
That's the first item.
Yeah. Are there other subjects that people have come up with that they would like to discuss so that we can, in effect, get them in a...
Now, you know what, before we address that, we need to take a vote on changing the agenda so we can discuss among ourselves other issues we want to talk about tonight.
That's on here.
We do?
It's item 4, isn't it?
And what, item 4 does not cover that? That we said we can't, we don't know what list it is we want to discuss. We're just going to say, what else do we want to look at?
I think it would, well, how to handle a broad range of conversation about future topics.
Yes.
Well, I think that the key is to avoid taking action.
Right.
I'm not entirely comfortable with that. Really, the key is to avoid a situation where the public has not been adequately informed about what you're going to talk about, bearing in mind that you can add things by a 2/3 vote at a regular meeting. You know, we're into a gray area, aren't we?
I'm guessing I can get a 2/3 vote on anything we would like to discuss.
If, you know, perhaps the best, yes, he is. Perhaps what you can do is state a subject, take a 2/3 vote, add it to your agenda, and then discuss it. You will, that's certainly the conservative approach with respect to
Okay.
compliance with FOI.
Yep. And the reason is, Rick, what we're trying to do is figure out what do we add to the next couple of agendas.
Got it.
And that's,
Clear.
and it takes, what we're finding is it takes a lot of time to coordinate schedules.
Yeah.
So we don't want to come here without agenda items. So we already have one agenda item that we had discussed tonight, right? I'm not in trouble with just
Correct.
saying
That's correct.
that is the specific bonding language.
That's correct.
Okay. Do I need to vote to see if anyone would like to add another potential agenda item for next meeting or a future meeting?
Let's try it and see how it works.
Okay. Could I get a motion from anyone that would like to add something to the next agenda? Or a future agenda, any subject that you would...
Let me understand this. You're asking for proposals to be discussed at a later time.
Yes.
That's correct.
We are not acting on anything
Oh,
more tonight.
no, I don't want to make this more cumbersome than we have to make it. So, if you want to make a motion to add to this agenda discussion regarding next month's meeting, let's go with that's okay.
Okay.
Since will be discussed, since the public can come to the next.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're not missing anything else.
Let's try that.
Yeah. Okay. Paul, are you making a motion?
No, I was about to.
Do we need to make a motion?
Motion to discuss items that we'll discuss in our next agenda.
So moved.
Second? Peter,
Sure.
thank you.
Yes.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on whether we continue this meeting? No discussion? I'll try your minds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion's been made. Let's talk about what we're doing in the next meeting or more. Diane, do you want to start?
Yeah, I just have one topic that I thought would be an easy one for us to cover at the next meeting, and it's just changing the antiquated department names to the modern nomenclature for departments like civil preparedness and welfare department and things like that. So I thought that would be a pretty easy one, but I don't know which department heads we would need to have here. Or can we just make recommendations and maybe just run them by the mayor, or would we need all the department head? The 4 departments that I was looking at were civil preparedness, data processing, the welfare department and personnel, because those are sort of like antiquated names, just to upgrade them to like information technology, emergency management, and things like that. So I don't know whether we would really need those department heads here, or, I think it's an easy topic, but.
Changing the names is easy. The mayor has asked us to look into the entire organization and possibly rework it. Now, I think to do that, we would need, I think that's going to be an extremely large meeting. And I wonder whether or not we want to ask the mayor if he would like to come and start that off and bring in department heads with their recommendations. Do you, any?
I think that when we spoke about this, the things in the future, you had listed long-term items on your agenda a couple weeks ago, a couple meetings ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think under the caption of organization was that dealing with new titles, new organizational structure. Part of that was the planning and zoning thing, although we could certainly pull that out as a separate piece because that's a large item. I would agree that I think we might want to hold off, Diane, with the titles and put that in as the whole organizational thing and solve that at the same time, rather than change them now and then maybe have to modify them later, if that seems reasonable to you.
Yeah, my note was on organizations, revised department and position names, revised public works and the parks and rec departments. Now, I'm not sure what the mayor had in mind when he brought up those kinds of things, but I do think we're gonna need someone that understands why this makes sense. Peter?
I think that in our government, in our city government right now, there are positions that are named in the charter that are not filled. We don't have anybody occupying those positions. One would be a term, the risk manager. We used to manage all the insurance business, among other things, and took care of claims and monitored certain things. I don't think we formally have that position. We have a person who's designated to do that in the finance department. And I just cite that as an example. And I think that goes under organization. What positions make sense to name in the charter? What do we need in the charter? How do we provide the city with flexibility to adopt and change as it goes forward without having to be stuck hidebound to the language in the charter? I think when we do that, we open a potential, a little bit of a minefield where there are people who have a position that I'm going to call a charter position,
Right.
where they're named in the charter. And I think that that's something we need to tread very carefully on if we're going to get it, if our goal is to finish this process, have it voted on and accepted and adopted, and just not go through there roughshod. So I don't know. I mean, that's a more complicated endeavor that may require education on our part as to knowing what these positions are, who's likely to be impacted by any change, how that change would affect them. So maybe we need to start hearing from more department heads in areas that we are not sure of. It seems like quite a bit of that is under the ambit of the finance director, in his other hats. It'd be nice to get a letter from him about that.
There was some discussions with him along that line when we met with him to talk about bonding, and he has some ideas. One particular thing that I brought up was, is the purchasing department, for example, reporting structure correct? Having it reporting into a financial function as an independent. He had some very strong views on that. So I think you're right. I think this whole organizational thing, if we want to choose to move on that as the next agenda item, and start bringing, our ideas and thoughts together as to what we need, we could put that on the next meeting, I suppose. But I think if we take those long-term things and discuss each of those tonight and try to put a priority, which one would we like to tackle first? I think we've tackled all the easy to do, right? And we passed those tonight, Carl? Pretty much?
Pretty much.
I have a suggestion. Would it go somewhat hand in hand discuss the referendum piece as we discuss the bonding piece next time? Because there's some,
I
there seems to,
I think they're correlated, certainly.
you know, it may be a relevant discussion at the very,
Yeah. Now that, so,
I like doing the easy stuff first. We move right along. Eric, is there anything else that, I mean, we need to hit all the easy buttons first, and
I have a handout.
do you really?
You would have to ask the
I
question.
thought you were done.
No.
he saw the
See, here's the thing.
You guys have been talking. 'Cause I'll go
He
over
set
my-
that up, didn't
That
he?
was-
This is for discussion next time. These are, remember I told you that there were some antiquated statutory references? For example, here's an explanation of those. And then as I was doing them, I finished doing them and realized that there was one more.
Now, but we can't act on this.
No, I'm giving those to you so you can read them. We won't take our time tonight. And if you'd like, you put them on the agenda as charter corrections. Didn't we talk about global
Yes.
corrections?
Yes.
yes.
But it didn't make your list, that's all.
Yes.
Okay, so I was prepared to, talk about these.
Oh, you threw me off this. I thought last time you said when we were talking about the typos and the 27 corrections.
These are not typographical.
Oh,
These are sort of
Because
substantive.
we don't have to do the typos. and
Correct.
things. That's, okay. Could we, Peter, let's make this our second agenda item next
Sure.
week, because that's an easy one. Because I'll go through my list, and again, this isn't complete, because we're looking to get ideas of other things to look at. But under longer term, we do have to come to grips with the land use policy recommendation of the mayor by combining planning and zoning. So we're gonna need to figure out who do we want to involve in it. That's part of a political process. So do we bring in, so I think that's gotta be something that we put on that list. The organizational piece we just talked about, but I think that also would include ideas that have been presented of maybe changing the name of the city clerk, changing the duties, in addition to these other things that we just discussed. Right, those are long-term, fairly big projects. It's been brought to our attention that perhaps the mayor and the council, and maybe others, should have their terms extended from 2 years to 4 years. And if we do that, then we want to look at recall provisions and things like that. So again, it's not just, we can just talk about it, but I do think we want to involve the political side of this and the people involved in this.
So we need to start inviting people.
We need to start calendaring these so that we can try to invite people. Because I think Mr. St. Hilaire was wonderful that he came here as busy as he is, but I don't know that I want to burden him with what positions do we want to change.
Well, I'd like to make a suggestion.
Okay.
I think we need to, why don't we start with something that's pretty obvious, that might be easy to handle if we can invite the right people, would be the city clerk. Why don't we ask the present city clerk to come and talk to us about her position?
Okay. I think that's,
And perhaps she can suggest anyone else who might have some input in that, some members of the council, and maybe a prior city clerk might want to come in and add some input.
do you think that's appropriate for the next meeting?
I think that to have somebody come and educate us at every meeting for a little bit and have a little discourse with them is not a bad thing. It gets us focused, and we all learn from it.
Okay.
And I think that it helps us with our decision-making. It gets us some input, and it will assist us.
Even
So
if we're not gonna take any
a
action.
decision that particular day.
But it will be a topic of discussion, so it needs to be on the agenda.
Correct.
And would you invite her then? And others as appropriate, and add it to the agenda? Did we decide that we are doing the bonding and at least some discussion next time on the referendum
On the bond.
rules?
I think we should discuss the bonding.
And the referendum as it relates to that, not the general referendum?
I think that the referendum thing is to me, my personal alarm bell is going off on all sorts of different things. I mean, we have a set of rules for any ordinance. And then there's the regular budget, which is always a referendum issue. And then if we start playing around with the bonding, do we want to change that?
That's why I'm wondering if we need to discuss it as we're doing all these, but
No, that's Paul's point.
You know.
Paul was that, if we change it for one, shouldn't we consider changing it for all?
And I think most people would tend to think it's simpler to keep it all one way. I think that having circulated petitions in my lifetime and try to get people to sign them, having worked on trying to get people interested in voting for a bond issue many years ago, that these things are difficult to do, that there's certain high, even if you go down to 5%, it's going to be pretty hard to get 5% of the registered electors to sign a petition in the city of Danbury. It really is.
let's start that discussion.
The
At the next
threshold for
meeting.
Do
referendum?
we need to change this on that?
Okay, who do we invite for that? Do we invite the heads of the Republican and Democratic Party to that meeting?
Any thoughts?
The head of the council? I mean, the part I'm gonna have a tin ear on is the politics side of this, because understand, referendums could be an emotional thing, that could be a poison pill
Well,
that kills everything we do here.
I think that,
Hmm?
The last time there was a referendum on the budget was the Equitable Taxpayers Association in
Sarah.
the early 80s, I believe.
Yeah.
When Bowden was on.
Where?
Well, after Sarah.
right, oh, that's right.
Was
The
Ed
second
Tony
Ed
and
Tony.
Lydia Glinsky, and I'm not sure you want to go that direction, but
See, I think that the politicians will say that we don't monkey around with referendum rules on budgets.
I'd like to hear that then, but I think I'd like us to discuss it. It's been brought to us, I think it's an issue, we can reject it, and my sense is it's gonna be a very difficult thing to get through. But if the politicians are gonna tell us if you monkey with it, it's dead on arrival, I think, I'd kinda like to know that.
So if you want to do that, my suggestion is we invite our current mayor back again to talk about it in a more limited way. We don't need to keep him for that
Right.
long a period of time.
Right.
We might want to invite a former mayor to come in and put his 2 cents in, and everybody else to get a little history to it. And my suspicion is that the mayors, the politicians will say, hey, you don't want to do this in Danbury. I mean, look at Brookfield, look at Bethel, look at all the self-destruction that goes on in our, in our little area of Connecticut here over a referendum. But we need to hear that, just as we're going to hear people who want to change those
Okay.
rules.
Would it make sense if we get an agenda, a long-term agenda with all these things that's being discussed tonight and the things we discussed previously, put them in one document and share that document with the common council and the mayor? Give it to the city clerk to put it on the common council's agenda. That way, they've been posted as to what we plan to look at. If they have input, they're welcome to come and address us.
Well-
Isn't that a form of?
It is. It would just require a little more work for some members of the commission.
The timing of it would be difficult, but if we in effect listed them, here's the things that we are,
Here's our topic.
here's our
these meetings.
topics, we don't even know when yet, that we
Right.
would be doing them, but let people know, because I think someone will whisper to us that you're going down the wrong road on
Yeah,
this.
these are the things that we're gonna take a look at.
Okay.
Don't know when, but, if you have things you wanna add to it, or you've got a problem with it, come see us.
What do you think?
I think it's great.
Well, you were on the
We
council.
had, yeah, and we had, can't think of his name, the other meeting.
Ben.
Yeah, he came for, I think he'd be very helpful in
Okay.
providing input.
So communicating with the members of the council, the mayor,
Just,
and,
I think if you, is the appropriate procedure to go through the city clerk to get it to the common council, as opposed to going to each individual council member?
okay.
So if we did that, it would appear on their agenda to read it into the record.
you could send it in the form of a communication, a letter from the commission to the council.
Right.
Should the chair send a letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Want to make a motion?
He's not in swinging distance.
I'll block them.
You're bigger than me, Paul, I'd be afraid to hit you. So. Okay.
Do we need
you
an
think
emotion?
you're in a position now to identify when you're going to be talking, or indeed what issues you're going to be talking about?
Not when, but most of the what, I would guess. Or or a lot of the what.
Perhaps you want to think about coming to the next meeting prepared to create this list.
So that
As
would
an
be our
agenda.
agenda item?
Right.
Okay, sure.
Okay,
Why not?
let's do that. That's, I've been looking, good. That's,
Okay.
Peter, you're
Well,
right
I'll be
here.
ready.
Okay, so
Fourth.
that's the final
The
agenda
deadline to
item,
submit things. I
Fourth
think it's
one.
February 3rd or something, the next meeting?
February 3rd.
Agenda 24 hours prior to the meeting.
Yeah, yeah, so that'll be posted.
Friday.
And that's our agenda for the next meeting, and that final piece will give it, will help us calendarize things going forward.
Why don't you rephrase, what are we doing for the final piece now?
Oh,
List.
that we are going to, our
Discuss.
agenda item will be what topics will we be discussing in the future? It won't be limited to that, because other things may come up from public session or ideas that we come up with. But at least of the things that have been presented to us and the things that we've put together from the research. So Dan, we're gonna want a list of all the stuff that you've come up with. We will then make a master list. We can disseminate that to all the arms of government so that we can start getting some feedback. Okay?
Okay.
Did we make a motion that we have to vote on?
Sure.
You make a motion that chairman
Do
sends
you
a
remember
letter.
what was the
No, I make
last?
a motion that we add these as agenda items, is that what we're doing? How's that?
Right. Second?
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay, motion's carried unanimously. Anything else that anyone would like to bring before us that Rick would let us talk about?
That's the wrong way to phrase that.
You know, you asked if there was anything in here. You mentioned earlier this evening streamlining this document. And I think our secretary at an informal get-together mentioned a preamble.
We have never had an informal get-together.
A preamble.
A preamble to this. There is no preamble to the charter. And I think your idea was to have the mission
Thomas Jefferson
statement.
did not write the
I
preamble of the
know
United
he
States
didn't.
Constitution.
Do you have the mission statement somewhere incorporated into this?
We might want to look at that, yes.
Bring that up if you would like to add that to our agenda items.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Make a motion, we close.
motion's been made that we adjourn.
I
Second?
just have two little tiny things I wanted to bring up. You know the chart that I gave out yesterday last week from New Haven? It was not part of the charter. When I went back and looked, so that's not something we can really add to the charter,
Okay.
that organizational table. Because I thought that it would be nice to add, but it's not really something that is part of their charter, so I don't even want to present it as something that we should work on.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I don't know whether all of you got this in the mail, but there's gonna be a workshop, and it says
Oh, yeah.
February 12th, which, February 12th is a Tuesday, but it says Monday, February 12th, so it would conflict with our meeting
If it's Monday.
if it's Monday. So,
It is Monday
there's an error
because,
on here.
yes.
It says Monday, February 12th.
My wife
12th is
is
Tuesday.
an appointed official, and she said to me, that notice you got is for that Monday.
So it's gonna conflict with our meeting then.
But we'll have our meeting, I think. Well,
Well, it says that everybody's encouraged to attend that workshop, so I don't know,
Rick, it is on Monday, I am almost certain that this is on that Monday.
It conflicts with our meeting.
It's, if we are, do we have to do something if we are going to skip a meeting, or is the sense of this,
We post a notice.
that we're not having the meeting?
Right. We can decide that at our next meeting.
Okay. It'll have to be on the agenda.
Which is February.
That's our next meeting.
February 3rd.
Oh, 30?
yeah, and then,
February 3rd.
You keep saying February 3rd.
February 3rd is our,
Oh, February 4th.
yeah, and then the,
Leap year.
Now we know where the city got it from. I'm sorry, February 4th is a Monday.
I thought we were meeting on the 11th.
Who works for you?
Our next meeting is the 11th.
Oh, wait a minute.
Our next meeting is the 11th.
Yeah.
Right.
Today is the
See you
28th.
later.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Now we're the 11th and the
Yeah, we're
12th.
not meeting on the 1st.
The 11th, that Monday.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah, we're
public
meeting-
schedule that you
that's-
get on the
Right.
city
Not the
website.
fourth.
Yeah, February 11th, yeah, I have it.
Excuse me?
And the reason.
Oh, is that wrong?
Diane just thought, what? We're not meeting the 4th?
No, we're meeting on the 11th.
The 11th, which is the conflict of that meeting.
Fine, you know what? Why don't we do this? I'll find out about the meeting, and I'll contact you by email And Chairman Morano can make a decision.
Well, because we're not going to get any of the city officials that we wanted here at our next meeting, but I hate giving up and going 4 weeks before
I don't know,
we meet.
Jean may be here. She may be able to come. She's been through those things before. I think this is not the first time they've had that.
Is that a meeting?
Do we need to go through that meeting? I mean,
We just need,
is it
we just
important?
need a quorum.
They're gonna, I believe they're covering FOI and Robert's Rules. We've already done that. So if you want to do it again, and I love doing it again, but. we'll change that.
Let's plan on that we're still meeting on the 11th, unless, for us to cancel a meeting, how do you cancel a meeting if we
I
can't
think we have
cancel it?
a
You can
real
cancel it.
agenda to address on the 11th. I would suggest we hold our meeting on the 11th. You know, and we could find out what, you can brief us on what they're gonna say up there, right?
Maybe the chairman could talk to council. If you think we need to go to that other meeting, then you can make a decision, otherwise we need.
My understanding is it's Freedom of Information Act and Robert's Rules.
That's
Okay. If that's the case, let's plan on meeting, we'll work on the agenda,
Okay.
okay? Okay. We did have a motion, I think, to adjourn. A second. Any more discussion?
I said second.
Okay. No, you made the motion, you can't second.
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 Mary.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned, thank you.
This is gonna be too big.
You want your extras?
Yes, I'll take the extras.
You know, you look at
Is
things,
there an extra hand in
I,
charter?
when you said that about the language on the assessment thing, I thought, oh my God. You know, 'cause you
Yes,
know how
there
you
is.
look
Oh,
at
good.
things, something one way.